You get it? I'll get it. I'll get it. Okay. Right. I was thinking you might need it. Yeah. Sam, how is your white? What do you call your white bus?
The white elephant.
The white elephant. Great.
It's been doing well. Yeah, I've been on the road the past 8 months, 9 months. I'm in Boulder for just a couple of weeks again. So I'm actually staying at a Sangha friend's house with my cats for a bit. So it feels very luxurious and spacious here. But I'm heading out again on Friday. Yeah.
Great. Wonderful, Sam. What's your cat's name?
That is Thomas. Yeah.
Thomas. Okay,
Another
great.
one, Miko, who may make an appearance.
And I know, and Jitsujo, where's Rue, Jitsujo? I guess Rue's not here. Oh, there's Rue. All right, excellent. All right, well, here we are. It's 10 o'clock. Thank you all for joining us. There's a pitch for Donna today. I hope you'll be generous, and maybe Kelly will put the link in. All your support is important for our Zen Center. So whatever you can contribute, we do appreciate. It's my pleasure to introduce Jitsujo Gauthier. Am I saying that right? Gauthier? Something like that. Okay, thank you. She is an old friend from the Native American Bearing Witness. And actually before that, when I went to Zen Center of Los Angeles to teach hula and meditation, look at her, she is doing it. Oh, right. I tell you, those Zen students over there are very attentive and they are in their bodies. It's so great. So Jitsujo, it was really great. We met again 2 years ago at the Native American Bearing Witness, which Sam Randall here, who's also joining us, was one of the organizers. It was a wonderful, wonderful Bearing Witness retreat. And that's where Jitsujo found Rue, or should we say Rue found Jitsujo. She was a tiny, scrawny little kitty, kind of lost, and would certainly have died if Jitsujo had not heard the little mewing and found her. And here she is, beautiful. Is it a she? I think she's a she, Rue. Okay, yeah. And she's all healthy now and getting into all kinds of things.
He's a he, actually. So
it's a he. Sorry, thank you. Okay.
I thought he was a she.
Oh, all right. Okay. So let me read, because such an interesting bio. She is the current chair and assistant professor of the Buddhist chaplaincy department at University of the West in Los Angeles, right? I think it's somewhere out there in the West. She teaches courses like Buddhist homiletics, formation, spiritual care and counseling, power, privilege, and difference, Buddhist ethics, frameworks, and methods, for both the Master of Divinity and Doctorate of Buddhist Ministry programs. Her research focuses on practical application of Buddhism within fields of contemplative education, clinical ministry, religion and health, and interfaith work. She is a Zen priest and preceptor living in residence at the Zen Center of Los Angeles. For the past 9 years, ordained within the Zen Peacemakers and White Plum Asanga. She is a member of the Buddhist Ministry Working Group, completed 2-year-long CPE, clinical pastoral education residencies, and 1 unit of certified CPE educator training. Her practice and pedagogy invite more tenderness, softness, and breath into meditation, as well as the classroom. She values questions like how to train the body-mind to appropriately respond to hardness, violence, and difference, how to stay fresh moment to moment, and how to continue seeing self as other and other as self. My pleasure to have Jitsujo Gauthier here with us, Reverend Jitsujo. What is home, right? Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me here. Thank you, Roshi Jun and Roshi Joshin and Jun Mei for organizing this. Thank you all for coming. So the topic, I guess the title that I picked is What is Home? And that kind of spurred out of a conversation that I was having with Sokyo, who's here. And that conversation kind of came out of an exploration I've been in, kind of around what is wildness and how to return to wildness. And, you know, really that's how, for me, is how to be more aligned with the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, but also like how to be a good parent to Rue. You know, it was like I found him in the tall grasses, you know, born in the wild, and not wanting to really domesticate him, like not, and also like not really wanting to continue to domesticate those parts of myself that are free and alive and wild and beyond my control, like completely beyond my control, and very much, you know, true nature. So, you know, it kind of comes out of this, there's a lot of writings out there that kind of talk about if you want to return to this sacred feminine, like this, you know, dark, absolute energy. If you want to return to this sacred masculine, this like pure movement, action, and both of those things, you know, combined, you have to kind of return to what is wild and really undomesticate yourself. So that's my introduction. Into this koan, I'm going to talk about this idea of what is home via this koan. So I'm not really going to answer the question, but I'll probably talk for about 30 minutes and then I'll open it up. So this is case 16 from the Gateless Gate koan book. The title is The Sound of the Bell and the 7-Piece Robe. So Yunmen, who is a Song Dynasty Chinese Chan or Zen master, pretty famous. The Japanese translation is Unman, but Yunmen said to his assembly of practitioners, "The world is so vast and wide." So I'm just going to pause there for a second. So the world is so vast and wide. So of course, like you can see the concept of that. The world is so vast and wide, but in this moment, like, what does that mean for you? Because in another translation, it might say the world is vast and wide like this, like this. So this, you're your body. Like this book, what is vast and wide about this book or yourself? So I'd like to just kind of invite you to, take a few breaths and just really explore what is here. Like, who is this you that is here? What is this book that is here? What are the 6 realms that are here? A lot of the Mahayana sutras start with kind of naming, like for 5 pages or 5 paragraphs or a few pages. It starts by naming like all the assembly that has gathered, like on Holy Vulture Peak or Mount Sumeru or wherever. So, here everyone is at the Zen Life and Meditation Center in Chicago, and then people are zooming in from other places. So everyone on the screen is here, and everyone in the Zendo is here, and all the hungry spirits inside yourself are here. The hell realms are here. The insects are here, they're around. The animals, like just all the animals around the place where you are, the animals and the insects. We're so human-centric. Just all the 4-legged and winged creatures, and they're all they're here, they're around. If anything, we're all sitting on the earth and they're all around that. There's tons of them around. Whole animal realm. And then the human realm around the world, the plants and the sky, and within that there are, just aspects of ourselves, or in reality, like the jealous gods. Like, maybe the word God, but there's warriors, there's fighting warriors in human form or animal form or invisible form. There's the heavenly deities, or how I like to think of as the privileged aspects of ourselves that are just resting on our laurels. So all of those 6 realms are here, everywhere. And just, the whole universe, it's right here. It's happening. We're on a giant ball spinning slowly in space. So the world is vast and wide. That's what one once said. The world is so vast and wide. So vast and wide. Why do you put on your 7-piece robe at the sound of the bell? So the 7-piece robe could be this rakusu, like traditionally, but it could be, just you all put on some clothes to come here, right? So why did you put on what you put on this morning to attend this Zoom? So there's that aspect of it. There's also this aspect of the sound of the bell. So what is it that calls you to practice? What is it that invites you to practice? So traditionally in a monastery, or like I live at a Zen center, and the bell rings about 8 minutes before any kind of service or practice period. And so it's generally kind of understood that in a monastery, it takes the priests or the monks or the monastics 8 minutes to put on their robes and get to the service or the meditation hall or the Dharma talk. And so the bell rings and there's a sequence of sounds that's kind of inviting. And it's not just inviting the humans, it's inviting all of the 6 realms to come to the service or the meditation hall. But this question, like, why do you put on your robe and come to practice? Or why do you come here? Or I really like, what is the bell that calls you to practice? And, you know, it's not just like, to me, I guess I don't see it as a bell. I see it as, it could be anything. It could be like a sensation. Like, what is the sensation that calls you to practice? And not like, oh, I'm just going to come and sit down and meditate. But that moment where you're like, oh my God, I have to practice. I am angry, or I am like so afraid, or I am so triggered. I'm so triggered right now. Like there's like visceral somatic sensations happening in my body that are very disturbing to me, or powerful, or however you want to label it, like upsetting or unbalanced or whatever. So that's the bell that call, like that moment where you're like, I need to follow my breath. I need to return to, you know, sitting here, return to grounded. So it could be a sensation, or you might label it a feeling. It could be a thought pattern, you know, like, you know, for me, I start just like, I have like this hatred, or I just can't, I hate that. And it's just like this thought pattern, or I hate myself, or whatever it is. I feel so ashamed, or whatever your thought pattern is. You have a million of them. It could be opposite. It could be like, wow, this is so great. I'm just going to keep eating ice cream, you know? But some form of conditioning that manifests an aspect of suffering or dissatisfaction. It could just be like a low grade dissatisfaction, a constant, just overarching craving. That's why you practice. Or it could be, you know, some form of injustice or fear or hurt. Could be an addiction that you've noticed, or just a habit that's an unhelpful habit. Maybe what calls you to practice is that you want to be a better listener. You notice you don't actually listen to people. Like, maybe you listen to like strangers, but you don't actually listen to your parent or your partner or your best friend. You just kind of half listen. Or maybe it's because like what calls you to practice is you notice, you know, you're just being a bystander, like a silent bystander, and you want to be an active bystander. You want to speak up when you see something harmful happen. You want to speak up when you see a microaggression happen. You want to speak up when, you know, you see, you know, someone in a power role, like doing something that's doesn't sit well with you. Or maybe you just want to learn to like meet everyone equally, like in a mutuality. That's kind of a chaplaincy term, where you meet everyone. You just practice to try to meet everyone human to human, like letting go of pretenses and roles. So that's kind of this question that I see Unman asking, like, what is the bell that calls you to practice? gonna kind of bring up maybe something that might be an example. So usually at the Zen Center of Los Angeles, we start our talks with an acknowledgement of the Tongva, who are the indigenous tribe that you know, occupied the land of Los Angeles, or had that land taken from them, occupied that land before the European settlers or colonizers, however you want to call it, came. And there's a lot of, I have mixed feelings about doing a land acknowledgement, because we're honestly not doing a lot of social action, or actually being in relationship to the Tongva. Like June had mentioned, I have gone on a few Lakota bearing witness retreats, and maybe I myself and a few other people at the Zen Center have gone to some cleanups, like on some Tongva land. But the action, to sort of mend that or develop that relationship is very minimal. So reading the land acknowledgement sometimes feels a little shallow. But so usually we just use it before a talk. We each person can kind of create their own acknowledgement or their own land acknowledgement. But the one I'm going to read you is the land acknowledgement that we read at a small affinity group we have here called the Facing Whiteness Group. And a group of us created this land acknowledgement, and our intention is to keep reading it and to hoping that we will start to develop more actions that foster relationship. So I'm hoping this might trigger you a little bit. I acknowledge the unceded territory. Oh, what is the tribe or the indigenous tribe in the Chicago area?
Potawatomi.
Say it again.
Potawatomi.
Akawatomi. Okay.
Yeah, and they're part of the larger Algonquin tribes.
Okay. I'm just going to use the word Akawatomi.
No, it's Potawatomi. Potawatomi.
Okay.
Potawatomi.
Potawatomi. Okay. I acknowledge the unceded territory of the Potawatomi people where I am living today. For hundreds of years, these indigenous peoples have been subjugated and genocided by our white ancestors. Today, the Potawatomi people continue to live throughout what we now call Chicago. We commit ourselves to dismantle the systems of white supremacy that dispossess indigenous people of their lands and deny them rights to self-determination. So just wondering, what comes up in everybody's body, because, not all of us here are white, and some of us here may be white. But this line where it says, for hundreds of years, these indigenous peoples have been subjugated and genocided by our white ancestors. I'm just wondering, what comes up in you, or what arises in you by just that phrase, these indigenous peoples have been subjugated and genocided by our white ancestors. Because of course I could say my white ancestors own that. But how does that feel for you to say my white ancestors? I don't know how that feels. for someone who is Black, Indigenous, Asian, Pacific Islander, Latinx, Middle Eastern, or identifies as a person of color. And I don't also know how that feels for those who identify as white or whatever you identify as, Jewish. You know, I'm not trying to be binary about it, but I guess what comes up in your body?
Discomfort.
Yeah, just maybe, yeah, discomfort, could be dukkha, could be a thought pattern. Just notice. You know, if someone else has something that comes up that they want to name, please do, because it's an important part of the process. Naming your sensations. You know, feeling, it could be a feeling of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And I guess this idea that that this is my responsibility. And is there a separation that happens between that? Or, you know, like the trauma responses are fight, like, doesn't have anything to do with me. That's not mine. And maybe that's true. I don't know. But just that response is kind of it's a little bit of a trauma response. Or flight, like, it's a similar response, but it's not anger. It's just kind of go away. Like kind of, there's clinging and then there's kind of aversion. Or numb, kind of a freeze response of just, I don't even know how I feel. I don't even know what's happening. I feel numb. I don't feel anything. Maybe it's neutral. Maybe I'm free. Maybe I'm enlightened. Maybe it doesn't bother me. But it's just kind of a freeze response. And there's also a fawn response, which is like, might be like, oh my God, I wonder what so-and-so on the screen is feeling right now. Like, it's like worried about somebody else. Like, Jitsujo just said this thing and I wonder how so-and-so feels. It's kind of like it's like a fawn, is like a codependent response. So they're all ways to kind of move out of our body or our own experience. And I guess to me, this is the moment to practice. Like, this is the bell. Really, like, look into, like, what is that? What's going on here? What's this suffering? What's this discomfort? How do I take care of it? I just love Thich Nhat Hanh. He just talks about, you know, just this practice of, like, as something arises, whether it's real or unreal, a thought, a feeling, a hungry ghost, being in the hell realms, a mosquito, you know, a thought pattern, but how to just, like, kind of embrace that, like, really embrace that. You know, Zen teaching talk about invited in for tea, but I like this idea of embrace, recognize, like, oh, this is here. This discomfort is here. Maybe I don't even have to name it, but I'm going to hold it. You know, want to grab Rue, but sometimes I just imagine that I'm holding the discomfort in the same way that I would hold Rue. Just like pet it, talk sweetly to it. So there's this this Buddhist teaching called the 12 links of origination. And it kind of talks about our reality as it is. This is anyways, I can't really sum it up for some reason at this moment, because it's like a whole like philosophy. But one of the links, the link that I find most interesting is this link of contact. So there's, you know, it starts off with ignorance, and then there's like, I don't know, name and form, and a bunch of links, and I think it's like the 6th or the 7th link or something like that. I think the 6th link is our sense gates. So we are this, basically this being or this body that has these sense gates of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and our mind, our consciousness. We have these sense gates, right? And at a certain point, just living our life, we come into contact with something. So I was just inviting you to come into contact with this land acknowledgement, or just this part of this land acknowledgement. Read it again. I hate reading it. I feel so uncomfortable. But this part, for hundreds of years, these indigenous peoples have been subjugated and genocided by our white ancestors. So I was inviting you to come into contact with that and to reflect on how that touches your senses: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. And to notice kind of, because what's after contact is feelings. What feelings arise? Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And I think the one after that is craving. Like, do you start to notice yourself wanting to figure that out? Or like wanting this to be over, or just like wanting to make it go away, or understand it, or whatever it is. And then do you notice yourself clinging? Because that's the one after that. It's clinging to, either clinging to judgment or clinging to something, some kind of habit that you have. A few more minutes. So for thee, this moment of the bell, which I love, this idea of this moment of the trigger. I've been triggered, like I'm upset. I've seen or I've heard something that I don't like. You know, so maybe you've heard something, but it happens all the time where all of a sudden you see something that you don't like, that you don't expect. This isn't supposed to be that way. You shouldn't have said that. And that moment, and that might cause like this, a little upset. Just like, it could be a big upset, but it could just be a little upset. Just upset, like things just get turned up a little bit. And what do you do with that? That's like the time to really practice, to really to work on developing patience, understanding, loving kindness, compassion, like being with the suffering. You know, it's like I talk about it, you know, I say the words, and, you know, maybe you understand the words, and it's super, you know, super simple, you know, to kind of get, but in everyday life, it's not that simple, you know. Like I just remember when I was just traveling back east, and with Rue, and God, I don't know how people have kids. Like, I don't have kids, but like, I just don't even know how they cope. So I'm with him, and I brought him in a backpack. That's like a pet backpack on the plane, and I have to give him a little anti-anxiety and stuff. And I got to the airport, and I was supposed to do a special check-in, and so the woman at the counter was like, okay, well, so you have to pay for him. I was like, I thought I already did pay. And she's like, I don't see a thing. And I just, just the anxiety of the airport, I just started to get like, wait, I thought I did pay. And I was like, I just started to worry about finances and the whole thing, like in this little moment. And so then I have to pay. And so I pay, and I'm like, Jitsujo, just calm down, like breathe, like, it's not a big deal. You're not gonna die under the bridge, it's $150, not a big deal. You have $150, relax. And so then I pay, and then she's like, oh, and you also have to pay for your carry-on, because he's now your carry-on. And I was like, wait, I have to pay for, and I just like blurted that out. I was like, wait, I have to pay for him and I have to pay for my carry-on? That doesn't make any sense. And the woman's like, that's just our policy. And I was like, well, United doesn't do that. And they're like, well, this is American, we're not United. And in that moment, I realized that the woman that was helping me was like a Black woman. Maybe she was Jamaican or something, because she had an accent. And I was like, just slow your entitlement roll, and it was so hard because it was such a rub. It was such a rub for me, where I could see like my entitlement, and I could see like, like I really wanted her to bend the rule for me. I really like kind of thought like, well, even if it is their policy, like, can't you change it for me? Can you see this is like hard right now for me? And even though I saw that, it was like, there was no embracing. There was a little like jittery, maybe I could hug you now, but really wanting to let you take over. And then there was also like watching like me kind of have this anxiety that I knew was like leaking out, like it was like leaking out, and she saw it. And I was like, are you sure? Like, I think I said something like, are you sure? I don't think I said it. Are you sure it's a policy? But anyways, it doesn't matter. And she just looked at me and she's like, ma'am, I think I know my job. And I was just like, ugh, that just was like a dagger in my heart. I'm like, you are that Karen, that privileged white woman. Ugh, so gross. So gross. And so I just said, oh, I'm so sorry I'm being a jerk to you. Actually, I said, I think I'm trying. I think that was the other thing that I think I said, I'm trying. I'm not trying to be a jerk to you. And then that just felt like it was just, I was just in the muddy water of it, And I'm like, I'm not a lotus. I'm just a muddy. And then I just took me and Rue and then went down to the pet relief area, and the pet relief area was closed. And I was just like, went into the bathroom and went into the stall and like tried to give him his anti-anxiety stuff in there, and just felt so muddy and just disappointed in myself. Disappointed in all of it, and like really trying to just not like beat myself up on top of that, you know, make it worse. Just breathe. Like really, really just do the practice in that moment. Oh, I just saw Thomas make a little cameo. So, you know, I could talk about the theory for, you know, really eloquently for a lot longer, but, you know, to me, like I said, practice is tough and important. So to me, like this koan is why do I do it? Because I want to walk the talk. I want to just live my life pretending that I'm sitting in the meditation hall and I'm like, holy, holy, holy. So good at this sitting, you know. But to really live it in the world. And to own like my conditioning, the conditioning of my white ancestors. And to really practice to change that in this life. To really trust that the world is vast and wide and can hold whatever, like the whole universe can hold this like difficulty that's happening right now. To the universe, it's just like a little speck of mud. Like I'm just like a little dirty human in a vast and wide ocean of space. Okay, stop there. I'd love to just open it up for any questions or comments that you have.
Thank you so much for your talk. And I just love the example at the airport. I was right there with you. You know, I mean, there are so many times when we get so irritated. And actually, I had never thought about it from the angle of my privilege. That's really great to start looking at. And I also really loved the invitation to the wide ocean, to really be looking at all the surroundings. And I think I'll never hear the bells exactly the same way again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I really appreciate you being vulnerable and talking about that. And I think of all the times I'm on the phone on a service call for technical support when I get irritated. And to frame it in terms of entitlement is very humbling, to say the least. And you know, we have actually he's Potawatomi indigenous Kyle White is a professor at, I think it's Michigan University, and he talks a lot about kinship time. And I when you were talking at the beginning of this wide open everything, I think of that kinship time helps me kind of frame things, because we're so caught in our own time of crisis that when I reframe it in terms of kinship times, it feels more like, okay, so we could connect. to animals and cats and trees, and it just, for me, but I get that the bearing witness seems to me what most practice is all about. When sooner or later we're bearing witness to our shit one way or the other. So I really appreciate your talk. Thank you.
Thanks. A couple of things come up. Thanks for just all of those, like, things bubbled up as you were talking. And one was the awareness of the entitlement actually came where I realized that some of the way that I've internalized or been conditioned, like in the body of a white woman, is that I don't, what I had said to this person was that I don't feel entitled to ask for exactly what I need, and not like demand or expect that it'll happen, but it's like, I said, I don't feel entitled. And the person said, it's not entitled. That's the wrong word. But it's almost like I don't feel deserving or worthy. That's probably more the right word. Or, to just truly identify what it is that I need, like my own needs, just for this person. And express that to somebody else, and not for them to have to give it to me, but just to be able to say, like, I really need some space right now, or I really need, I really need to say no right now. Just something in me, like I just don't feel worthy or something. And it caused me to look up the word entitlement. And so and I was like, oh, right, that isn't what I mean, because entitlement is like deserving special treatment or expecting special treatment. And that's just such a tough pill for me to swallow, because I do expect special treatment. Like I do expect people to change the rule for me, to change the policy for me, to change the, like, if I get the ticket or like the exception, like, well, you made a mistake, but we're going to change it for you, for me, and I do think that is really a big part of white privilege that's hard to really swallow. And then the other thing that came up, I forget. What was the second part of what you said? You started talking about something else.
Oh, Kyle White talks about kinship time. Yeah.
I forget what came up for that. Anyway, maybe it'll come back. Somebody else has something.
I was just going to say thank you for your humor, because that always somehow makes the medicine go down easier. So yeah, that point of irritation where, something comes up, always coming up, and and practice really helps. And even with practice, it's hard, so thank you for just that support for the practice. It's so encouraging. Thank you.
Thanks for encouraging the humorous part of me. My dad, a long time ago, because I'm, I think the reason I got into Zen practice is because I was just so serious, very serious, very serious. And justice is very serious. I'm very serious about it. And about everything. I would like, I don't know, I just was always like that. And my dad, college got me a little refrigerator magnet that said, like, blessed are those who can laugh at themselves, because they will never cease to be amused.
That's a good one.
Anyone
Thank you so much for the talk. Can you see me back here somewhere?
June May.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for letting me coordinate this with you and being so helpful. And I just loved what you spoke to today. And to take it back to the title, like, what is home? You mentioned the wildness or trying to be undomesticated. I love that kind of point of view. And can you speak a little more about that, either from your example or from other areas in your life, or how it is that you try to foster that in your practice?
I can, but just before I speak about it, I just want to ask you, like, how do you see that juxtaposition between what is home and what is wildness, and like in what I spoke about?
I kind of see as I start to look at the space that we all jointly share in our communities or in this world as being wild, I find that I'm finding more connection to other than, because how wonderful in this wilderness or the wildness we're all in that we do run into one another, and how you said have that sense gate where we can interact and engage. And I think it does turn more to realizing that the home is here in me, that feeling of welcome home or coming back to home is inside myself.
Yeah, and that we have to build that for ourselves each moment, like each time the bell rings, we get a chance to build our home, and to expand our home, like to invite that, whatever, all those bells or triggers or stuff in, and expand our home. And so that, I guess I see that as an invitation. And then kind of what Roshi Joshin was talking about, this vast and wideness, is kind of returning back to this place that I kind of invited us into in the beginning. Like, so I just try to remember, like, when I start to get really tight and like, whatever, like irritated and then judgmental of my irritation, like that's that like link where it's like contact, feeling, craving, clinging. I'm just like tight. I'm just like, I can't stand myself. I'm a hypocrite. I'm a walking hypocrite. It's just like me thinking and talking about me with me. Kind of, that's what I heard Roshi Joshin saying, how to like return back to like, who is this me, like this vast and wide, like me is more than me. There's the animals and the plants and the insects, and there's hungry ghosts, and there's hell realms, and there's jealous gods, and there's heavenly gods, and there's the whole universe without labels, and just there's this empty, whole empty, loving, caring, just the earth is just suspended. It's just kind of hanging out in space, and that's just kind of being held with I don't know. But in that moment, I am connected to everything and held by everything. And the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, the ancestors, like how to like really feel that refuge, I guess. And just to answer your question more practically, like I'll tell a little story. So a lot of this kind of came up when I went to this campsite with Rue, and at 3 a.m, he wanted to get out of the tent, and I let him out, and then he kind of ran around, and he usually stays around, and then he went off into the wild. Like he didn't come back. And I was like, oh my God. And I just went to what I'm now calling Jitsujo worst case scenario. I just embody Jitsujo worst case scenario. And I know that there's possibilities that he could have really been eaten and hurt, but for me, like it just was so, like my abandonment, like I felt like it went to the core of like the umbilical cord got snipped away, and so I ended up, just to make a long story short, I ended up like because he wanted to leave and go and explore in the wild, and he did come back that night, but then he went off again, and I was like, I just don't think I can be at this campsite and just allowing him to go off all day, and I don't know what's happening with him, and I can't be. I was just worried, and so I decided to follow him, and so I would get up at 3:30 with him, and we would leave, and I would have coffee prepared the night before and some breakfast, and I just would follow him into the desert, onto the plain, into the foothills of this mountain. And he ended up, like, he had this boulder that had this tree that he was sleeping in, and I ended up like not sleeping in the tent anymore and sleeping on this boulder with him for about 6 days. And while I was there, under this boulder with the insects and everyone else, I started to sort of really question, like, do I feel like I belong? Do I feel like I'm going to be eaten by something, or is there a threat? Do I feel like I really belong here, like in my heart of hearts? And it's such a rub for me, such a rub. And what is safe? And what is my home? And what is wild? And what is crazy? So.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
I think we maybe have time for one more question or a comment.
Good morning. I just want to share that every Sunday I wake up and I don't want to meditate. I want to do something else. I don't want to listen to another Dharma talk. And every time, later after it's over, I say, boy, it is so great. They are so great. I just don't understand why I have this resistance to doing it, because they're always so great. I just want to thank you. Just thank you so much.
I love that. And I think that's a good question, like resistance. So just two things briefly come up. One is I had this Dharma brother who's since passed. His name was Kevin or Rakusan. And this stayed with me my whole practice because he wasn't very influential, like early on in my practice. And he would say, every morning, my whole goal is to beat Kevin to the cushion. I wake up and I have to beat him to the cushion. And so I would try to just like get up, stand vertical, and sit down before I realize that I'm sitting down. And so sometimes I get to the meditation hall and I just try not to think, just like brush my teeth, get out the door. I set my alarm like late, so I can't even think, just get up, go, sit. And then I'm sitting there, and about 10 minutes in, I start waking up and I'm like, this was a terrible idea. I should have stayed in bed. I did that practice for many years and it passed. And it still comes back. So Yeah, so every morning get up and beat yourself to the cushion. That's a great practice. And then I think that's all I can remember. I forgot the other thing. That's time. Oh, we're at 9. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Jitsujo. We really appreciated your time with us. So all blessings to you and Rue, and we'll have to do this again. Thank you so much.
Do we say bye?
Yep, we can all
Okay.
say bye. We can unmute and say bye. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see
Bye,
what-
Jitsujo. Nice to see you.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you, Jitsujo.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're the bell.